She was born into a world of pure privilege, beauty, and power. A direct descendant of Rome's most legendary families, she was raised in a palace where ambition was the very air she breathed. Her name was Valeria Messalina, and her story would become one of the most scandalous and debated in all of Roman history. When she first arrived at the imperial court, the empire was still reeling from chaos. The terrifying reign of Emperor Caligula had ended in a storm of blood and fear, leaving the city desperate for stability. And out of that storm, a new unexpected ruler emerged: Tiberius Claudius Caesar. The Senate had always dismissed him as frail, timid, and unfit to rule. But Claudius would surprise them all. Behind his quiet, scholarly demeanor was a sharp, calculating mind, a historian, a reformer, a man determined to restore Rome's dignity. To signal this new era of morality and renewal, he married a young noblewoman with a seemingly perfect reputation, Valeria Messalina. She was just 15 years old, beautiful, soft-spoken, and carrying the blood of emperors in her veins. To the Roman people, she was a symbol of hope, a fresh start after years of madness. But within the gilded walls of the Palatine Palace, appearances were often more dangerous than any battlefield. Messalina quickly learned just how fragile the Roman throne truly was. Behind the emperor stood men with immense power, advisors, generals, and influential freedmen who whispered in his ear, shaping his decisions. The court was a tangled web of secrets and shifting allegiances. Watching quietly from the sidelines, Messalina began to understand a crucial truth. In this world, survival depended on control. So, she started building her own network. She used her charm, her influence, and her quiet powers of persuasion. Every grand banquet, every private conversation became an opportunity to listen, to learn, and to turn information into strength. If a senator opposed her or her family, they soon found their political careers mysteriously fading. If someone offered their support, rewards and promotions would quickly follow. By her early 20s, she was no longer just an empress by title. She was one of the most powerful and influential people in all of Rome. But power, especially in the hands of a woman, always attracts stories. Soon, whispers began to spread throughout the city. Whispers of secret gatherings, of private intrigues, and of a young empress who was said to be testing the very limits of Roman decency and influence. Ancient writers, many of whom were deeply hostile to politically powerful women, would later paint a shocking picture. They claimed she led a double life, stepping down from her throne at night, disguised as a commoner, to walk the city's hidden streets and mingle with the ordinary people. Whether these sensational tales were the truth or simply rumors twisted by her enemies, one thing is certain: Messalina's influence reached far beyond the palace gates. She used her vast network of connections to reward her allies and ruthlessly remove her rivals. Entire estates, vast fortunes, and prestigious titles changed hands based on her word alone. Before long, senators began to fear her favor just as much as they feared her anger. But Rome was never kind to ambitious women. The more power she accumulated, the darker and more lurid the rumors became. Her critics painted her as deceitful, ruthless, and insatiably hungry for control. Her supporters, however, saw something different: a survivor, a brilliant woman forced to navigate a world ruled entirely by men, using the only tools they seemed to fear: her intelligence, her persuasion, and her command of secrets. Still, her reach continued to grow. She surrounded herself with loyal friends, took a keen interest in state politics, and even began to influence major imperial decisions. And her husband, Emperor Claudius, trusted her completely, perhaps far too completely. Then a man named Gaius Silius entered her life. He was young, handsome, a respected senator known for his charm and ambition. Their friendship, or perhaps something more, would become the most dangerous connection of her life. Silius had ambitions of his own. Some ancient sources claim he dreamed of becoming emperor himself. Others say he was simply captivated and drawn into Messalina's powerful orbit. But their alliance, whether it was romantic or purely political, soon set off alarm bells throughout the imperial household. In the year 48 CE, while Emperor Claudius was away from Rome on official business, Messalina and Silius did something unthinkable. They held what ancient sources describe as a mock wedding. The true nature of this ceremony is lost to history. It may have been a brazen political power play, a symbolic act meant to test the loyalty of their supporters and secure their future. But to Rome's nervous senators and the emperor's guards, it looked like nothing less than high treason. When news of the wedding finally reached Claudius, he refused to believe it. His wife, the mother of his beloved children, could not possibly have betrayed him so openly. But his most trusted advisors presented him with evidence that was overwhelming. The emperor returned to Rome in a blind fury. The Senate descended into panic. Gaius Silius was arrested almost immediately. Messalina, realizing her world was collapsing, fled to the one place she felt safe, the beautiful gardens of Lucullus, a property she herself owned. There she waited for a message of mercy from her husband that would never arrive. Claudius hesitated, torn between his love for her and his duty to the empire. But his advisors, terrified of what she might do if she returned to power, relentlessly pushed him. They argued that the empire would never be safe as long as she lived. And so, in the quiet tranquility of those magnificent gardens, surrounded by the statues and fountains that had once been symbols of her power, the young empress met her end. She was barely 23 years old. The next morning, Rome woke to an eerie silence. By order of the Senate, Messalina's name was struck from public monuments. Her statues were torn down, her images destroyed. They issued a formal decree of damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, the ultimate punishment of being completely erased from history. But history has a funny way of remembering those it tries so hard to forget. For centuries, her story has been told and retold by poets, moralists, and artists. To some, she became the ultimate symbol of Rome's moral decay and excess. To others, she was the tragic victim of a vicious propaganda campaign, a powerful woman condemned simply for daring to act with the same ambition and independence as the men around her. Because behind all the scandal and accusations there lies another, more complex truth. Messalina lived in a world where women were granted no official power, except for the kind they could cleverly create for themselves. And she created a tremendous amount of it. Her ambition wasn't dangerous because it was evil. It was dangerous because it was so rare for a woman. Her spectacular fall wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a public execution of female ambition. Yet her name endures, whispered across the ancient ruins of the Palatine Hill, and forever carved into the imagination of every historian who still wonders where the truth of her life ends and the legend begins. Valeria Messalina, the empress who rose from supposed innocence to unparalleled power, and from that power into immortal legend. They tried to erase her, but history remembered her anyway, not just for the scandalous things she may have done, but for the profound fear she inspired in those who could not control her. She remains one of the most haunting and fascinating figures of ancient Rome, a timeless symbol of how greatness and ruin can so often share the very same crown. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from history. We'll see you next time.